What's going on, you guys? Welcome back to the Neighborhood Podcast. One of those of the podcast. My name is Kyle Dabra. For today, we're going to go over some of the Thanksgiving Day games that we saw yesterday. There were three on the slate, and the first one that we're going to go over was the Bills and Lions game. This was actually a really competitive and compelling match if you guys were able to watch it. But the Bills won by the score of 28-25. With the win, Buffalo bumps up to an 8-3 record, and they still maintain one of the best records in the AFC at this point. This was actually a fun game simply just because it came down right to the wire, and the Bills end up getting a game-winning field goal with a drive that Josh Allen led with only about 20 to 25 seconds left in the fourth quarter after the Lions had just hit a game-tying field goal with about 25 to 30 seconds left in that fourth quarter. Josh Allen was able to move that Bills offense down the field in the field goal range relatively quickly, and Tyler Bass was able to hit the game-winning field goal that decided the game. Just to dive into the game a little bit more here, I got to give credit to the Lions. Even though that they lost, they had a really valiant effort in this game. And I'm basing this solely off of the fact that I thought the Bills were going to be able to convincingly win this game. And it had a lot to do with what the Lions defense had to offer. The Lions this year, their defense has really been their Achilles heel. And it's simply just because they give up a lot of points. They're one of, if not the worst defenses in the NFL when it comes to giving up points this year. And I thought that the Bills offense, despite the fact they're coming off of 3 or 4 days rest, that Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs, Devin Singletary, and Gabriel Davis, you could throw him in there too, would be able to score around 30, 35 points against the Lions. But I got to give credit to the Lions defense. They really held it down in the second half. And that was despite the fact that they gave up 17 first half points to the Bills. And I thought the Bills would have just kept that consistency going into the second half, but that was not the case. The Lions defense was able to step up at opportune times to get the ball back to Jared Goff and that Lions offense. And, when it comes to the Bills in that second half particularly, it may have had to do with the Lions defense to a certain extent, but it also looked like that the Bills were dealing with just some communication issues, some timing issues that just seemed to be a focal point for that offense. And I think there was a little bit of dysfunction that just kind of stymied them in that second half, basically until that touchdown drive that Josh Allen was able to connect with Stephon Diggs late in the fourth quarter. And then you could basically say that they needed that game-winning drive from Josh Allen with 20 to 25 seconds left, and they were able to do that. Outside of that, those were the only two drives that the Bills were able to score there. So, the one issue when it comes to the Bills that I've seen from them the last couple of weeks is in the second half, they've struggled in some games. When it comes to the Vikings game a couple weeks ago, they struggled in that one, especially in the second half. This one in particular, they struggled in the second half. You could look into the Jets game where they went on the road to MetLife and they struggled in the second half of that one. So that's something that we kind of have to focus on with the Bills, especially when it comes to their second half offense. It seems to me they're not making the proper adjustments at halftime when it comes to their offense, and we'll see whether or not that they could be able to work those out as we go into the month of December and into January as well. When it comes to the Lions, like I said earlier, this is a valiant effort on their part. And, despite the fact that it came in a losing effort, they really pushed Buffalo here. And I got to give a lot of credit to Jared Goff. Going up against the Bills defense is not an easy task, simply just because the Bills have one of the better defenses in the NFL. But I thought Jared Goff was able to move the ball up and down effectively against that Bills defense. And you could look at the connection that he was able to establish with Amon-Ra St. Brown. That was really his go-to the entire day. St. Brown had almost 10 catches, almost had 125 yards, and had a touchdown on top of that. Jamal Williams and DeAndre Swift had their moments as well. But, when it comes to the Lions, they were able to get into position to at least tie the game at the end of the fourth quarter with a field goal. But unfortunately, their defense just couldn't hold it up on the back end to get that game into overtime. Because had that game gone into OT, I wouldn't have been surprised if the Lions would have been able to get some sort of drive going to possibly win the game had they won the coin toss. Unfortunately for them, that did not work out for them in that case. Like I said, Josh Allen had that game-winning drive that set up Tyler Bass for that game-winning field goal, and that's all that she wrote. But, looking at the bigger picture for both teams here, I mean, the Lions are a sub-500 record. Granted, they're in second place in the NFC North, but it really doesn't mean much at this point, simply just because the Vikings are far and ahead the best team in the NFC North, and more than likely, they're probably going to win the NFC North within the next couple of weeks or so. So to me, the Lions are going to be in a really uphill battle to make any sort of playoff contention here. And then when it comes to the Bills, like I said at the top, the Bills are one of the best teams in the AFC. But to me, they are a team that's been struggling the last couple of weeks. They've had some losses that have been unexpected. And Josh Allen has had some turnover issues, and it popped up against yesterday. Josh Allen had a turnover that was, granted, a really solid play from Detroit's defense. But Josh Allen's definitely going to have to work on some of these turnover issues. They've been apparent the last couple of weeks. They're happening at the worst time, simply just because a lot of these turnovers are occurring in the red zone. And if the Bills are going to be one of those teams that Kevin and I had as our Super Bowl pick, they're going to have to turn over, no pun intended, these turnover issues, because it cannot continue at this pace simply just because they're leaving points on the board. And, to only win by 3 points against the Lions, granted it was on 3 or 4 days rest, so I will give them that. And they had a bunch of injuries as well going into that game yesterday. But you got to win a little bit more convincingly against teams like that, especially with the Lions that have a sub 500 record and are pretty much out of the playoff at this point. But a win is a win. They do bump up to 8-3, like I said, and we'll just kind of see where the Bills go from here. But that'll pretty much wrap it up for me. The next game that we'll go over will be the Vikings and Patriot game that we saw from last night. So expect that to come out pretty soon. But with that said, you guys, thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll see you guys in a little bit.